So glad we managed to catch you for a second, man. You've been inside for a bit as well. We're at the very end of the 2 days now. Can you give us a bit of an analysis, a bit of a lowdown on your thoughts, what's happened the past 2 days?
Sure. Well, firstly, I think that this is the most optimistic I've been coming out of any of these hearings, and I've been to all of them nearly. Just because the judges didn't seem as dismissive as the previous ones, they seem to genuinely want to find out about the issues. I mean, there's always a chance that they're just doing that because it's the end of the road and it's a PR move to make it seem like they're. I'm not saying that means there's going to be a judgment in his favour, but on the merits of the case, I mean, I think as a neutral or an independent, there's no doubt that the Assange defence lawyers made the case convincingly that he deserves to be here, have his appeal heard. Because remember, this is only a hearing about whether he can even have an appeal.
Okay.
He hasn't been. The original judgment, which actually blocked the extradition on narrow grounds, that's what they want to now appeal. They want to appeal all the substantive issues which weren't dealt with at the time. So that's issues around freedom of press, around foreseeability, the fact that when he committed these so-called crimes, there'd never been a prosecution for those crimes. So you can't convict someone for a crime that there's no precedent for. So I mean, I think it went well generally. But again, we've done a lot of work declassified about how the justice system is compromised in this case.
Well, you reported just this week, didn't you, about how one of the judges has a long history with MI6?
Yes, one of them had MI6 as a client, and well, I say the funny, but the ironic thing is that the previous judge that refused the appeal before, Jonathan Swift, he also had British intelligence as his clients.
Okay.
And he said that British intelligence was his favourite clients because they were really good at preparing evidence.
Okay.
So that's kind of what we're dealing with.
Right.
But who knows? I mean, even if Assange loses this, then he's exhausted all possibilities in the English court system. But there's a chance of going to the European Court of Human Rights.
Okay.
If he wins it, he goes back to an appeal hearing where they'll try and overturn the extradition. So it's it
so
looks
all
like
isn't lost at this point.
all isn't lost, but and also you obviously have the context of this is there's a massive political movement around the world at the highest levels. We're talking about presidents. President Lula,
Yes.
Petro in Colombia. The Australian Parliament just voted in favour of Assange. So that will continue to grow. So no, all is not lost, but it just depends how long a man can survive.
But my feeling is that like the process is the punishment.
Exactly.
The longer they can drag this out, he's clearly too unwell to turn up the past 2 days as well.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's the tactic that they use.
Of course.
But I'm quite surprised that you've come away from this feeling almost hopeful. Is that a stretch?
Well, I mean, hopeful in the sense that I think even the US tactic now might be to just make it go on and on.
Right.
Because as I say, if they grant the appeal, then that starts the ball rolling again. It could be like 10 months before the appeal hearing, and obviously there's a US election coming. So I don't know if it's in the US interest now to just keep him in prison in limbo in the UK.
Okay.
So I'm hopeful in the sense that maybe he might win this judgment, but whether that's hopeful for his life and hopeful for the free press, who knows? I sensed that the case was overwhelmingly in his favour for an appeal, and I sensed that the judges weren't hugely dismissive, because at the other ones I've been to, they've just been outright rude and not
really
seemed interested in actually getting to the nuts and bolts. There's always this assumption that there's a palpable sort of disdain for Assange personally, I felt.
Yeah. Well, I was a little bit concerned yesterday when Kristen told us about the technical problems they had and people could hear evidence. I thought, oh shit, here we go again.
Yeah, I should talk about that because it is insane. As a British person, I'm embarrassed because there was a lot. It's interesting. There's a whole international community that has descended on London. So I met people from France, Italy, Belgium, the United States, and they've all come for the hearing, and it's an embarrassment. Like yesterday, we couldn't hear anything for ages, and then they said, okay. At the break, they said, okay, we're going to get an engineer and fix it. And then we came back after the break. And then after about an hour, it started cutting out. And then it was just a picture. And then there was one bit where someone was just on their phone. And the guy who was running it just looked confused. He was like, how the hell's that even got there? Then today, I went to the toilet, which you have to go out past some guards. And the guard said, okay, what are you doing? I said, oh, well, I need to go to the toilet. They said, okay, well, you need to know that you might not be able to get back in if you do that. I'm like, what? So I'm literally can't. There's no provisions for going to the toilet.
Right.
So I don't know if it's incompetence or a conspiracy.
Yeah.
But it has been marked, this case, from the start by the fact there's no open justice. They've kept it very hard to access him in Belmarsh.
Yes.
And they've kept the legal case hard to access in court as well. So I think that it could be incompetence, but obviously they don't care about ensuring there is access. And they should, because as an American who was in the viewing gallery with me, when it was all going wrong today, like there were spells again this afternoon, just an hour ago, where we couldn't hear, and he was just like, "This is insane." He said it to me. He said, "This is the trial of the century," and this is what you feel like. You're like, the whole of the free press is on trial here, and yet you can't even get a video link to people to hear what's being said. And we missed a really important bit actually, which was about assurances about the death penalty, which I saw on Twitter afterwards. But that was about. The judge asked the US lawyer, can they supersede the indictment when he's in the US with charges that would get the death penalty? And she said feasibly they could. So and that's big, because the US-UK extradition treaty does not permit extradition for any offences that carry the death penalty. The other thing that was interesting today that I thought was quite telling was the US lawyer was talking about the cable releases, and the lawyers and talked about how the fact that he published the names of informants was a major crime, which is not, by the way. You're allowed to. I mean, there's no law against if you haven't signed the Official Secrets Act. But anyway, she said, but and then the judge said to her. Yeah, but you know that there was another website which published all this as well before WikiLeaks, called Crypto. I don't know if you've come across this. So how can you then, and you haven't prosecuted them, how can you prosecute Assange for publishing those names but not prosecute Crypto? And she sort of said, well, it's because Assange got the document, got the materials. That's not an argument. So what if you obtain materials, you're then responsible for everyone who publishes those materials and how they get them. So it was quite an interesting little exchange.
Okay,
it was
so there's
really
a few cracks in the scene. So you're not coming away from this entirely pessimistic.
No. But as I said, even if he wins, he goes back into the system, which, as you mentioned, and I kind of agree with you, that I think that the part of the torture is the process. That the process is the punishment. So hopeful in the sense that he might win, but not hopeful in the sense that there's not probably some plan to just torture him until he breaks.
Definitely. Yeah. Oh, well, Matt, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's great to meet you, bro.
You too. You too, man.
We appreciate you, man.
Yep.